They said the fog came first in dreams, a silvery whisper curling along the spine of sleep, heavy with the stench of old stone and dried blood. No weather report predicted it, yet it arrived on schedule, slinking down the Bega like an omen no one could read. Some called it a seasonal trick of the river. Others, especially the older folk, locked their shutters and whispered prayers in dead languages, their eyes darting toward corners that haven't been dusted in years. But there were those who knew better. The wind curled like a serpent through the cobbled streets of Timisoara, hissing between narrow alleys and ancient eaves, carrying with it the scent of wet stone and withered roses. Fog slithered down the river banks long before dusk, coiling thick and unnatural around doorways and gas lamps. It didn't drift. It crept as though it had purpose, as though it were listening. Even the bells from the Roman Catholic cathedral rang softer than usual, their chimes dulled and dissonant, as if smothered by unseen hands. They echoed like the tolling of a memory best left buried. Johanna stepped from her carriage, the coachman silent and pale as he tipped his hat. Her long coat swayed with the wind, but it was not the cold that made her tremble. There was a pressure in the air, a tension humming at the edge of perception, a stillness that felt inhabited. She turned toward the looming theater. The gaslights cast jaundiced halos across the facade, and the grand archway yawned open like the throat of something waiting. Inside, the air was thick with perfume and powder, but beneath it, fainter than breath, there lingered the coppery scent of something old, something not meant to be awakened. Johanna moved along the velvet and gold of the theater, its grandeur suffocating in its closeness. Her seat, front and center, felt like a spotlight and a trap. The program trembled in her gloved hand. A name caught her eye. Ludwig, and for a heartbeat the theater fell away. She had not spoken his name in months. Ludwig, the man who once lived for music more than for breath. He had the presence of a storm barely contained in flesh, sharp cheekbones, unkempt hair like a dark halo, and eyes that burn with too many thoughts. His music came not from the world, but from something beneath it. People said genius. She had whispered curse once, in the dark. They had loved like fugitives, furtive, feverish, and fated to collapse. Their affair was brief, but it had cracked open something in her soul. Since they parted, she had heard echoes of him in every silence, his ghost in every wrong chord. The music began. It did not rise, it emerged, crawled, a crawling, riding melody that slithered across her skin, too slow and deliberate to be human. The strings moaned. The horns sounded like something dying. Ludwig's sorrow was there, yes, but something else too. Something wrong, coiled deep in the harmony like a buried scream stitched into a lullaby. Her eyes fluttered shut, and when she opened them again, he was there. High above, in a darkened balcony, unmoving. Tall, broad-shouldered, in the deep navy of a high-ranking officer's uniform. The gold of his epaulets caught the light like a blade. But his face refused to be seen. Shadows clung to him with unnatural persistence. But she felt his gaze, as physical as a hand upon her neck, staring. Something twisted in her stomach. Not fear, something more intimate, as if something long dead inside her had stirred. After the final bow, the crowd spilled into the reception hall, their laughter oddly brittle, too loud. Johanna stayed near the edge, glass in her hand, the wine acrid on her tongue. And then, again, that presence. Across the hall, Commander Karl. The name slipped through courtly whispers like a contagion, transferred from Vienna under a veil of scandal, though no one dared ask why. It was said he had a mind for war and a soul made of winter. No one stood near him now. His silhouette was etched against the flickering candlelight, hands behind his back, expression unreadable. Their eyes met. The world seemed to shudder. Johanna's vision dimmed for a moment, like the room itself recoiled. His stare was not a man's. It was ancient, an intrusion, as though something else watched her from behind his eyes, something that remembered her from before her birth. And then it passed. No nod, no movement, just silence, and the terrible intimacy of being seen. The fog outside had thickened into a living thing. Johanna refused her carriage. She needed to move, to feel her boots strike the earth, to remind herself she was still real. But the streets had changed. Her heels clacked against the cobblestones, too loud, echoing like hooves. The alleyways gaped like mouths. The air pulsed, damp and electric. She could no longer see the cathedral spire, only the silhouettes of buildings that leaned inward, conspiring. Then, movement. Soft, behind her, a shuffle, a rustle, the sound of breath almost, but too wet, too close. She turned. Nothing. Only shadows long and finger-like, stretching toward her feet as though to trip her. A door creaked somewhere far off. A dog barked, then whimpered into silence. She walked faster. Her breath misted in frantic bursts. The fog swallowed corners that had once been familiar. Street signs vanished. The cobblestones beneath her seemed to shift and buckle like skin. She passed a fountain with a crumbling statue, a saint whose eyes had been gouged hollow by time or something worse. The water beneath it was black and still, though she could swear she saw something ripple. Then came the whisper, soft, low, melodic. Liebchen, Liebchen. She spun, heart clawing its way up her throat. Nothing. Only the fountain. And silence. Her townhouse emerged suddenly from the mist like a tombstone. She rushed to it, keys fumbling, the door opening with a groan like a moan from below ground. Safe. Almost. Inside, the fire hissed in protest as she lit it. The brandy burned her throat, but not her fear. The clock ticked with unnatural volume, a metronome for nerves on the edge of shattering. She told herself she had imagined it, that she was frayed by grief and music and too much fog. Then, footsteps. Soft, deliberate, measured. They stopped at her door. Not the wind, not the creak of wood. Footsteps. Johanna crept to the peephole, her breath held prisoner in her chest. She looked. Karl, unmoving, his face waxen in the moonlight, yet utterly still, too still. The skin was too smooth, too pale. His eyes were black in their sockets, like holes in a mask. He did not knock. He just stood there, like he was waiting for a door between worlds to open. She watched him for minutes that felt like centuries. Then he turned, slowly, as if every motion carried centuries of weight. She rushed to the window, pulled back the curtain. He walked into the fog and vanished. Johanna did not sleep that night, and though she would never admit it, not to God, not to herself, some part of her longed for the knock that never came. Some part of her wanted to open the door. Some part of her still hears the music, and it's getting louder.